Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lean Software. By the end of this lesson, I hope that each and every one of you will be able to give me a concise explanation of what lean development is. Cool, to start with, I'm gonna have everybody read the link that I'm posting in chat. Let's take 5 minutes on this one.
Ugh, I just love this author.
He's my favorite. He's really underground too. The post has 0 claps.
Seems like we should fix that or something.
All right, 5 minutes, have at.
I think I see a clap on there.
Another minute. Welcome, Sydney.
Hey.
We're doing some reading. There's the link.
Thank you.
Cool. So now I want you to read one more thing, and then we'll chat a little bit. This one, all the same things, but this is the Wikipedia article. We'll go into a little bit more depth on each of those topics. Go. Let's take another minute on this. All right, pencils down. So, any like initial impressions, questions? Let's talk about lean.
I was kind of surprised to see that it was developed by like Toyota Manufacturing.
Yeah, going back to the 1930s, actually. This goes all the way back to Shingo and who's the other guy's name? Taiichi Ono. Same place the Kanban came from. Kanban is part of the exact same system as lean.
Yeah, I was just going to say that they seem very similar.
Yeah. So you could say that Kanban is a way to visualize your work so that you can apply lean processes to it to reduce waste. One of the things that's initially confusing about all of this, let me make a new. Is that we have like, all right, so there's Agile, under which we have Kanban and Scrum and XP, and then we have Lean, and well, if Kanban is part of this, and if Agile is like a 2001 thing, and Lean is like a 1930 thing, so the Venn diagram overlap on these ideas is substantial. So if that's Lean, then all of Agile overlaps with it quite a bit, and like all of Kanban would go in here. Like some of the Scrum stuff is probably a little bit more out here, but Lean is about waste elimination. Agile is fundamentally about iterative development. Now, working iteratively helps you reduce waste. So there ends up being a lot to share between these. And I think I've mentioned in another one of these, Agile goes back to 2001, but these like broad ideas about empowered teams and working in small complete features and like that sort of thing, this is like a 130-year battle that we're like still in the middle of. Other immediate questions, takeaways, ahas?
Didn't Just in time also come out of Toyota, and that's lean, isn't it, or not? Or how does that fit in this?
Great question. So JIT is also part of the Toyota production system and is also a lean tool. So the idea of JIT is just in time. So JIT is an application of lean philosophy. And what it means is that customer makes a purchase, which sends a signal to this part of the supply chain, which sends a signal to this part of the supply chain, which sends a signal to this part of the supply chain, which signals the origin of the supply chain. We need another one. And then they go, okay, cool, coming right up. I bought a cup of coffee, and then Starbucks goes, all right, we need more coffee. And then Starbucks corporate goes, cool, we should make more coffee. And then they talk to the growers and go, yo, we need more coffee. And then the growers make sure that there's a plant that's ready for the next cup. And so then that goes to here, goes to here, goes to here. So it's waste elimination, because the other way we would do this is forecasting. We go, we guess that we need this much coffee, so let's make this and hope somebody buys it. Lean's the opposite of that. It's all pull systems. Where have I heard of that before?
Kanban.
Kanban.
Kanban. Exact same principle there. The thing that triggers production is a purchase. Now, like, how does the first purchase get made? Like, you can't grow a plant overnight. So what do we do with that? And so the lean answer to that is a thing called drum buffer rope, which you might was in the Kanban reading. The idea there is that this is a drum, like a snare drum. And it is attached. This metaphor is fucking weird. Just a heads up. Is attached via a rope to a buffer of like extra supply. And so the goal is to make the buffer as small as possible, and the thing that fills up the buffer is the drumbeat of people buying things. So the drumbeat slows down, we don't fill up the buffer so quick. Drumbeat speeds up, we fill up the buffer a little bit more. And so as that's going, we're pulling through that buffer through the rope. Drum, buffer, rope. Don't worry about the metaphor too much, but the idea is that, like, okay, so to have smooth operations, we have to have a buffer. That's not the same thing as forecasting. And we're still trying to keep the buffer as small as feasible. So if we can find ways to eliminate waste, like if now we figured out a new technology allows us to grow the plants right in the back of the store. All right, well then we can get rid of these things, shorten the rope, shrink the buffer. That's a goal in lean production.
I bet more companies wish they were doing this when coronavirus hit.
Okay. And see, here's the wild thing about this. JIT actually took a hit after coronavirus because they're like, oh, well, this makes the supply chain super vulnerable. So if any part of this falls apart, then the entire supply chain is at risk. Fucking JIT, man. But here's what the alternative would have been. The alternative would have been overproducing exactly the wrong thing and then having nothing of the things that we needed. Because in fact, JIT systems, they're highly optimized, but they're also super flexible. And so, yeah, I think JIT saved our asses in coronavirus times.
I loved the principle of make decisions as late as possible.
Well, and like you've seen us do that every single day.
Yeah.
This is why we plan our lesson plans the day of, not a week, a month, a quarter in advance.
Or have it just blueprinted to us and said, like, yeah, this worked 5 years ago. It should work today.
I think that like decide late is the real power move in all of lean. I think if you grok that, I think you get the rest of lean. So with decide late, and this is like such a simple thing that's so easy to go your whole life and miss. You will always know more in the future. So why do we rush to make decisions? Why do we make a decision that we don't have to make? You go, all right, well, you're going to have to make that decision sometime in the next month. Cool. I'll make it a month from now. You will always know more in the future. It's impossible to know less in the future. Now, to answer my own question, the reason why is like a very natural anxiety around uncertainty. and like this need to resolve uncertainty. The thing is, like trying to resolve that certainty leads us to make poor decisions, leads us to make decisions without the available information, leads us to make haste. So if you can live with that uncertainty, make your decision as late as possible. There are so many things that people that were applying this idea didn't have to do when the pandemic hit. Hell, even my own conference, there were a lot of things that were like, wait. And that was driving some people nuts. They were going, oh, well, I'm not doing anything right now. Come on, I could be working on this. Super glad we didn't apply any energy toward that. Because you always know more in the future, including we're not going to have a fucking conference. Competitor came out with another product. We're not even going to try to compete with it. We're going to pivot. Those are things you can do when you push off decision making. It's very similar to a budgeting principle, where if you budget money for something, you're not legally obligated to spend the money on that. You save up $3,000 for a vacation. You get the $3,000 saved and you go, well, fuck, now that we got $3,000, I can think of some other things I'd rather do than go on vacation. So shit, let's do that instead. You're opening up options. That's lean.
Are there any circumstances you could think of where that mindset does not work well? Like maybe certain fields inside of software development, or
the regulated ones are the hardest to do this in, but it doesn't mean they can't be done. And you'll hear that like, oh, well, in med tech, you can't run lean. Try. Yes, you can. So there are, in a lot of regulated environments, you are required to have certain kinds of plans on file ahead of time. Cool. That sounds like that's not waste. Even like if it's like actual waste, not helping you make a better product. Well, if the alternative is making no product because it's illegal, then all right, it's not waste anymore. So do enough of that to satisfy that requirement. That doesn't mean it needs to be like an ingrained part of your culture. And also, another thing with lean that gets confused, the exact same way that it does with Agile, is this doesn't mean low quality. An MVP, MVPs are a lean idea, by the way. MVP isn't the shittiest possible version of your app you could imagine. It's never been what lean is. Actually, let's explore this idea with MVP, because I think it's a good example. So minimum viable product. So the reason, like people focus a little bit too much IMO on the minimum and not nearly enough on the viable. It needs to be viable from the perspective of your user. It may not have everything on the back end that it might, could, would, whatever. But from the perspective of the user, it's enough. That satisfies like most definitions of high quality right there. Meets user expectations. Think of the example that I gave in my blog post, the like grocery ordering app. You go to a fully featured seeming website. It's an app. You fill out all these things that you want. The back end of it sends you an email. Print out the email, you go to the grocery store, buy all the stuff, drive it to the person's house. No database, no servers. That's an MVP. It is the least amount of work that you could do to make something that a user would consider completely viable and tells you whether or not you have a worthwhile product. You're making a hypothesis that something is valuable and then investing the least amount of effort you can to either validate or invalidate your hypothesis. That's all that is. From this user's perspective, they don't think it's low quality. Or another example, the site that we use to do all of your videos and stuff, when you're logged in as an admin, see some things that you don't see, like, wait for it, the ability to like add and remove these tags. I don't have the ability to reorder the tags. It's literally never come up. If I were just given a spec, I might do it. Super glad I didn't. Put that effort towards something else. Or like one that kind of bites us a little bit every once in a while is I can't reorder resources. I can change them. I can get rid of them, but I can't change their sort order right now. The features that it does have, though, these are tested. They're super high quality. It does exactly what it says it does. It just doesn't do everything that it could do. The phrase in the community is half, not half-assed. It's not unstyled. It's not untested. It's not sloppy. It's just not every possible bell and whistle you could imagine. That's what's meant by minimum. So cool, you're in a regulated environment. You're in a high safety environment. You're in all of these like other things where you can't apply these principles. You super can. Because like by definition, waste doesn't add value. There's nothing that needs more waste in it. Other thoughts, ahas, questions?
How would like something like an MVP be? I'm trying to think of how to phrase this question, but I think about issues with like scalability. How does this website or this product behave when I have a lot of people?
Sure.
Will it ever be worth making an MVP robust enough to say like work with like set it up to where it's scalable to 10,000 people and put in an extra hour of work? Or is that something that you would completely discard with lean?
So depends on whether or not the scalability is part of the viable part. So I'll give you a really good example of this. When Google does like a new test product, their needs for like test audience are very different than like your fucking new SaaS startups. So for them to make something viable, it needs to hit a certain level of scale right out of the gate, or it's no longer viable. And like even still, they try to control that. That's what those like closed betas are like are all about. They're like request an invite. If anybody was using Gmail around 2001, for like years, you couldn't just sign up for an email address. You had to like have a friend invite you. That's them trying to control the scale while they're figuring out whether or not this is worth scaling in the first place. But their like bottom of the barrel on that is more than I will probably ever like scale anything up to. Meanwhile, your grocery app, do you have anybody opening their wallets and paying now? About 2. Cool. Maybe scale to 3. see how much further you can get.
That makes sense.
By the way, that grocery app example, that's real. A guy actually did that. It was a one-man startup at a super fancy looking thing, and yeah, just printed out a list, went to the grocery store, delivered the things himself, and in the process got to see a lot about what the experience for the future delivery people would be. He was able to talk directly to his customers. It's like, hey, by the way, did you notice this thing on the site? Did you use this? Like, you're able to do your market research directly with the people who are buying. That's pretty cool. And that's like also like the opposite of low quality.
Which came first, Agile or product management?
My dad's been a product manager. I mean, he's alive. You guys saw him. He came to Santa, but he's retired. He's been doing that since like the 80s or so. Yeah, Agile's a 2001 thing.
Oh. It feels like they're so well paired if everything's user driven, or did it like switch how product management is done, maybe?
Well, so I think it was probably late 90s, early 2000s that product management was differentiated from project management. I think all of it was just called project management before that. If you're curious, the difference, project management has an end date, product management does not. So a project, it's over. Your project is done at some point. With a product, that's not necessarily the case. And don't get me started on program management. To this day, I can't come up with a good definition for what program management, how it's different than product management, I guess. I don't know, Brian, you're a program manager. Do you know?
Program management, like think about like day one to graduation and like all of the things that occur during that time. So any of the socials, any of like working with the team, like how surveys go, that's more of like the program. So think of it also confined within a bucket, and then just making sure that that has like a story arc in some capacity from beginning to end.
But how would you differentiate that from product management?
Off of your definition of product not having an end date, I would say a program typically has some sort of, this is like the start of the program, this is the end of the program.
But like when I was at Pearson, there was a program manager for My Labs.
Yeah.
It's just a product. I don't know, like, because
Yeah.
how it would apply to what we do is like software engineering is like the software engineering immersive is a product.
Yeah.
Which you manage. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that's fair. Because I would say like in nonprofit, everything's called a program. Like I was a program manager at the nonprofit side of things. And like that didn't have an end date. It just was like a continuous thing, but you were overseeing that program in a sense. I think you're right that product and program are pretty much neck and neck.
That's kind of what I think.
Yeah.
Cool. And we're getting back on track. Some questions about lean, ahas, observations.
One of my questions was, so it seems like lean software
Mhm.
branched off of lean manufacturing.
Correct.
I'm curious if there's any major changes that you would highlight that are specific to software that maybe aren't applicable in other areas.
That's a great question. So I think one of the biggest changes to Agile software is a lot of the things that when they're talking about waste elimination and lean, so much of that involves physical movement and pieces. And that's probably half or more of lean is about optimizing movement, making sure that you have like screws exactly where you need them and when you need them. And like there's so much of that. All of that stuff in software is automated. Like that's what the compiler does. When you run Rails S, a bunch of elves don't have to like run around inside your computer and make sure that like the ports are unplugged or whatever. And so like those aspects of lean don't have a whole lot of direct corollaries in lean software development. Now that said, there are some things that I think if you're creative, absolutely apply. So like one of the lean practices is called 5S. Has anybody worked in a 5S place before? They're kind of common. You know what 5S is? If I'm going off the dome, the 5S's are straighten, sort, shine, sustain. Right? It's, you always know when you're looking at a 5S workbench. It's these. That's 5S. So the idea is that you always know exactly where everything is, and you always know when something is missing. So this is an implementation of a 5S shop. Now, in computer shit, how does this apply to us? So a 5S like computer thing might be something like your file naming and folder conventions. It could also still be your physical workspace. So what physical tools do you need? Do you need a notebook? Do you need pencils? Cool, where do you put them? Do you put them in the exact same place every time? Do you know when they're missing? When you're finishing work for the day, do you put them back in the same place? That kind of stuff is lean. And the idea is that it is waste to fucking look around for your notebook, to not have the supplies you need to do your work. So you develop routines around these things so that the things that fundamentally don't matter don't occupy any brain space. Or like another one from lean that doesn't directly apply, but kind of abstractly applies, is in lean manufacturing, you would, I mentioned you'd have like a bucket of supplies, and maybe there's screws or caps or wing nuts or something like that. And so you're putting those on the things as they're coming down the line. And then as you like hit below a marked threshold on that bucket, once you can see the line, you take out your signal card, put it on the conveyor belt. Gets to the end of the line, and the person that has the giant stocks of supplies goes, cool, Kyle needs more wing nuts. And so then they send a cart out to refill your small bucket by your station. So that's a pretty core part of lean. In software, we don't really have anything directly like that, but we have things like the PR process. So maybe you issue a pull request on GitHub, and that triggers a series of actions. And it could be like a member of your team gets randomly slacked to review your pull request. And so then they do that. That'd be the equivalent of you sending a signal card down the conveyor belt. So you're ultimately, same goal as Kanban. We're trying to have a smooth workflow. So if you're looking at the exact things that were done in lean manufacturing, very few of them directly apply to software. Almost all of them, like the entire philosophy, applies to just about anything. More questions and ahas.
I will say, I feel like people say this a lot of like empower the team, but like very few people actually know how to execute on that.
Yeah.
And actually allowing the team to be the ones who make and like really drive what it is.
Yeah.
And so like anyone who's looking to step into a leadership position, like lead into this, ask questions. What does that actually mean? But like definitely it takes you from being the it person and makes your team the it person, and your job is to just support and get behind them to support with where they want to go.
Absolutely. So like there's a metaphor that I've been like, it's been kind of brewing in my brain that's relevant to that. It's the difference between all right, I gotta take my dog for a walk, and you throw a collar around their neck and just drag them on their side the entire way, and like, God, this is fucking exhausting. Like, the dog has legs. It's like, doesn't want to use them though. And you're just pulling the dog the entire time. Versus, no, it's time to go on a walk. And so let the dog out. Dog knows how to walk. And so I just go where the dog goes. That's empowerment versus top-down management. So much easier for the manager. It's better for the dog. And you might be surprised where you end up. Like I said, I'm still working on this metaphor in my head, but I think it works.
Is Six Sigma something that's relevant to software engineering? Because I've heard it thrown around back when I was like an engineering student.
Sure, it's not directly, but it's another application of a lot of these same ideas. So for anybody who doesn't know, Six Sigma, that's a sigma, right? Something like that.
Close enough.
There we go. Refers to how much variation you tolerate. So if one's like tolerating something within fucking 1 sigma would be super wide. Tolerating something in 3 sigmas, which is like standard quality stuff, a little bit less wide. 6 sigma in particular, I think, is 3 defects per million, thereabouts. So if you make a million things, you need to have 3 or less of them not be within spec to be 6 sigma. So it's a extreme focus on quality, which, as we've discussed, goes hand in hand with kind of all of this stuff. Now, like 6 Sigma directly applies, again, to manufacturing, and there are like 6 Sigma practices and stuff that apply most directly to manufacturing. But for us, what we would consider a defect is a bug. So per million features you ship, you have 3 or fewer bugs. That would be 6 Sigma applied to software. But like really what they're trying to get at is an obsessive level of interest in quality.
Also first implemented by Toyota.
Correct. A related thing to 6 Sigma, it's the same idea, just from a different person, was TQM, Total Quality Management. It's the same thing.
So we don't use Six Sigma per se in software, but like kind of carry over that mindset of just a high focus on quality.
Correct. So I'll pull up my real Agile history chart again. There we go. Okay, so here's our like freedom versus control history. Quality engineering, quality management, 6 Sigma comes from here. TQM was Deming. 6 Sigma was, it might have been Jurin. I don't think so though. I'll say it was 80s. Bill Smith. And that Jack Welch made it popular, although Jack Welch is the fucking like modern villain of this entire thing. Jack Welch is such a piece of shit. But yeah, all of this stuff is very closely related. Just different expressions of the same thing. Other questions about lean? Ahas, takeaways.
Why is it called lean? I thought maybe that'd be an acronym or something.
Cut the fat.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yep. All right, one last thing I want to leave you with is 3 wastes. Or sorry, 8 wastes. 3 forms of waste. Murray, Moody. There we go. So, actually, I'm going to go with the 8 waste one. Nope. Fuck. Shit, stop it. Fucking Google. So these are some specifically identified types of waste in lean. Defects, overproduction, waiting, unused talent, transportation, inventory. Hey, that's from Kanban. Motion and overprocessing. These came from manufacturing, but doesn't require a whole lot of imagination to see how these apply to software. Bugs, making features nobody that wants. Oh yeah, I work in QA. I'm still waiting for the devs to get back to me. This is one of the reasons that it sucks to have a separate designer and a front-end engineer and a back-end engineer and an infrastructure engineer. My last job, I was adding a feature, and it required me to make a new model, add some REST endpoints for it, make a UI for it. It was like listing something. It had like a Lambda that it needed, which is like an AWS thing. And so I had to build all that and then deploy it. So since I'm a full stacker, that was like an hour of work or so. If those were all different teams, that would have taken a week and a half. You put in the ticket, and then somebody has other things they're doing, so they gotta wait for your ticket to be important enough to them. That's waiting in software. Unused talent. We have all these people that know all of this cool stuff, and yet here we all do. They're doing everything in databases. So like my wife works for a school district. There's 3 database engineers and no programmers. Such a bad idea. So as you might imagine, everything's done in SQL. Things that should never be done in SQL are all exclusively done in SQL. And so instead, you can think of like an example where they did have programmers. They hired the right people. Now they're still doing everything in SQL. That would be unused talent. Transportation. So in software, this could be things like having too many steps in a process. You call that transportation waste. Or even like physical layout of a place. I was once on a team where the only meeting room we could use was like fucking hundreds of yards away. Spent a lot of time walking to and from that meeting room. It's dumb. Try to keep everything as centrally located as possible. Related to that is like the motion thing. So this is what 5S is supposed to be about, is you can pull out your drawer, you know exactly where your thing is, no wasted movement. You're putting on the wing nuts. The basket's right next to you. It's at an ergonomic height. You don't need to work too hard to get everything where it needs to go. For us as software engineers, that might be, don't make me fuck around with the indentation or something in my file. Just have a linter do that for me. Extra processing. I don't like the idea that's higher quality. That's not what that means. But over processing something would be something like putting it through too many reviews. I see this a little bit more in continuous integration. They run the tests too much, man, because you run them locally, then you have to run them again before your commit will work, and then you have to run them again once they've made it to the server. Then you run them again as part of the build process, and then you run them again as part of the deployment process. I feel like that might be an over-processing problem that the software business has. And then inventory, we talked about that all last week with the Kanban stuff. How much work in progress do we have? Every time you have work in progress, you have the chance that that feature is not going to ever get shipped because nobody actually needed it. Because a competitor came out with a better one. Because you figured out a way better use of everybody's time. We want to minimize that. Cool. Last question's about lean. So we had a goal. Our goal was that each and every one of you would be able to give me a concise explanation of what lean is all about. So we've talked about waste elimination. We've talked about buffers. We talked about minimum viable products. We talked about quality. We talked about different kinds of waste. What else we talk about? Deciding late. How that enables us to conserve resources, kind of like budgeting. All that stuff is what lean is about. So what I'd like each and every one of you to do is drop me a Slack message with your explanation. You're going to a lame party. They're like, oh, I heard you went to a lean lesson today. What's that lean all about? Write me a DM with your answer. Go. Great answer, Jay. Great answer, Marcos. Great answer, Paige. Good answer, Kelsey. Good answer, John. Good answer, Sydney. Good answer, Alan. All right, well, we're waiting for Luis. Jay, would you read your answer? That was really good.
Sure. Lean is a project management system all about cutting the fat out of a system. Lean focuses on the minimum you need to get something accomplished that is indistinguishable to the customer, such as the minimum viable product. It also works to reduce anything that is inefficient, such as too much inventory or too much traveling. It was created by Toyota Manufacturing. Lean focuses on having a process that is refined and sticking to that process. Every tool has a place and should be there if not in use.
Cool, very nice. Bravo. So a couple nitpicks. So project management system, it's broader than that. Think of it more as a philosophy for how you make your products or services. And then lean focuses on having a process that's refined and sticking to that process. There's another word that we didn't talk directly about called Kaizen that is pretty integral to lean processes. So we make a process and then we continually try to make it better. Because as we eliminate waste, we go, well, actually, now that we eliminated that, we actually don't need this other piece. And this other piece needs to pick up some of that. So you're constantly revising it. And the people who are doing the revising are the people doing the work. That's huge. It's not just managers doing this work. It's the people actually engaged in it looking for new efficiencies. And where this starts getting into modern Agile territory is, let's say you work in a factory and you find an efficiency and you get fired for it because, all right, I guess we don't need your job anymore. Yahoo! Is anybody else on that team ever going to find any way to make anything else more efficient? Probably not, because you made it dangerous to do that. So this gets into some management philosophy, and like I said, modern Agile has make safety a prerequisite. So everybody should be so interested in improving the process, but not in a way that's attached to their livelihood or anything like that. And so a separation of those two things, that's what we're going for. That's like culture holy grail, is people who don't feel like their jobs are in danger if they figure out that their job isn't needed anymore. You go, cool, I'm going to move you over to this other process then. Cool.
Wait, so how do you create that separation again?
So it needs to be honestly what it is a demonstration of it. If management demonstrates that that's not how they operate, then people dip their toe in the water on these things a little bit. They go, I think that maybe I could automate this part of my job. Are you going to question whether or not you need me anymore after that? This has to do with how they approach firing, how they approach layoffs. All of those are part of it. And so if management goes, no, man, you're on the team. Who's on the team is completely separate from what work people are doing right now. If you can make people believe through your actions that you've done those things, that's where you get people to do that kind of thing. Awesome. Anything else? Cheers, homies. See you at Sandown.